The first time I realized something was wrong, it wasn't because I saw it. It was because Erica stopped trusting what she was seeing. And Erica is not a person who does that. The first thing Erica said when we pulled up to the cabin was, "I can't change in there." She was right. Every wall was glass, not accent windows, not panoramic panels. Glass, floor to ceiling, corner to corner, all four sides, like someone had built an aquarium in the middle of the Allegheny National Forest and dropped a roof on it. The listing had said immersive nature experience. The photos had looked architectural, standing in front of it at 4 p.m, with the trees pressing close on 3 sides, and the afternoon light making the whole structure glow like a lantern. It looked like a display case. "And there are blinds," Kayla said, reading from her phone. "Motorized. You can black the whole thing out." "Then what's the point?" I said. "The point is you get both," Kayla said. "Stars at night. Privacy when you want it." Erica was already walking toward it with her bag over her shoulder, which meant the argument was over. That was how Erica operated. She'd voice the discomfort, register it clearly, and then walk straight into it. She'd been doing that since college. I'd always admired it. I think that's part of why I married her. She's the last person I would expect to misread something or imagine something that isn't there. The four of us, me, Erica, Kayla, and Kayla's husband, Neil, had booked the place for a long weekend. No occasion. Just 4 adults in their mid-30s. Yeah, trying to feel like the kind of people who rent glass cabins in the woods. Neil had found it. Kayla had paid the deposit. Erica and I had packed the cooler and driven 3 hours through the kind of Pennsylvania back roads where your cell signal dies in stages, like a patient being taken off life support. Inside, the cabin was nicer than the photos. Open plan living and kitchen, a loft bedroom up a steel staircase, a second bedroom behind the only solid wall in the place, the bathroom. The furniture was mid-century, the lighting was warm, and the smart panel near the door controlled the blinds, the heat, the exterior lights, and a sound system nobody had asked for. But the thing that hit you, the thing you couldn't adjust to, was the visibility. You could see the forest from every angle. And, this is the part I want you to sit with. The forest could see you. Not metaphorically, not in the way people talk about being watched in the woods. I mean, it felt directional, like attention. It didn't feel like a window. A window is a choice. You walk to it, you look out. This felt like the walls had been removed, like someone had peeled the skin off a house and left the bones standing. We cooked dinner, pasta, garlic bread, a salad Kayla made from a recipe she'd saved on her phone 6 months ago and had been waiting to try. We ate at the long oak table, with the forest going dark around us. And I remember thinking it felt like dining inside a snow globe. The exterior lights were off, the interior lights were on, and the glass, every pane of it, had become a mirror. That's when the geometry of the place changed. During the day, you looked out. At night, you looked at yourself. The four of us sat at the table, and I could see us reflected in every direction, multiplied, overlapping, a kaleidoscope of the same dinner party. Erica eating with her left hand, Neil gesturing with his fork, Kayla laughing, me watching. Not just reflections, alignments. Every movement echoed somewhere else in the room, a fraction of a second too cleanly, like the space was rehearsing us. We should kill the interior lights and see the stars, Kayla said. Not yet, Erica said. That was the first moment I noticed Erica wasn't looking at any of us. She was looking past Kayla, past the reflected version of Kayla, into the dark tree line beyond the glass to our east. I followed her gaze. There was nothing there. I mean, that specifically. The darkness was uniform: trees, undergrowth, the faint shapes of branches. Nothing moved, nothing was wrong. That last part is important. Nothing was wrong in the way you can point to. It just didn't feel empty. What? I said. Nothing, Erica said. Thought I saw something. But she didn't look like someone who had missing something. She looked like someone who had seen it clearly and decided not to describe it. I want to tell you, she was imagining it. That would make the next part easier. We turned the interior lights down around 9 and the exterior lights on, and the forest materialized around us again, the limited, theatrical, the floodlights carving about 40 feet of visibility into the trees before the dark ate everything. Neil and I were on the couch. Kayla was in the kitchen. Erica had gone upstairs to the loft. I heard her voice from above, quiet but distinct. James. I looked up. She was standing at the loft railing, looking down at me with an expression I had seen maybe 3 times in our marriage. Not fear, orientation. The look someone gives you when they need to confirm that you are seeing the same world they are. That was the part that mattered. Not what she saw, the fact that she needed confirmation. Come up here. I went up. The loft had glass on 3 sides and a better vantage of the tree line. Erica pointed northeast, just beyond the reach of the floods, to a spot where the trees thinned slightly and the ground dipped. There, she said, just watch. I watched. For about 10 seconds, so there was nothing. Then something in the trees adjusted, not moved. Adjusted. The way a person shifts their weight without stepping. A vertical shape, partially occluded by a trunk, maybe 60 feet out. Too tall and too narrow to be a stump. Too still to be a deer. It didn't emerge from the darkness, it was already there. The darkness just stopped hiding it. That's a person, I said. I don't think so, Erica said. What do you mean? I've been watching it for 5 minutes. It doesn't breathe. That sentence did something to me, not because I believed it, but because Erica was not a person who said things like that. She was an ER nurse. She triaged people for a living. She had once described a cardiac arrest to me with less emotional affect than most people use when ordering coffee. When Erica said something was wrong, it was wrong. And she wasn't guessing. She had been measuring it. I called Neil up. He stood between us, looked where we pointed, and watched for about 15 seconds. That's a birch trunk, he said. The white bark's catching the floodlight. It wasn't there 20 minutes ago, Erica said. You weren't looking 20 minutes ago. I was. I've been watching that exact spot since dinner. Neil shrugged. So the light shifted. The floods are on a different angle now. He went back downstairs. Kayla asked what was happening, and he said, Erica found a tree she doesn't like, and Kayla laughed. And Erica stood next to me at the railing and said nothing. We watched the shape together. It didn't move. It didn't leave. It maintained its position with a patience that made my chest tight. Not stillness. Patience. Like it had more time than we did. Then it did something that birch trees do not do. It tilted. Not much. Maybe 5 degrees to the left, as if it were adjusting its angle of sight. "Erica," I said, "I see it." "What is that?" She shook her head. I don't know. More like, I'm not going to say it out loud. We pulled the loft blinds down. The motorized slats descended with a clean mechanical hum. And for the first time since we'd arrived, I was grateful for a solid surface between me and the outside. Here's what I need you to understand about glass architecture. It doesn't just remove barriers. It removes the negotiation of barriers. In a normal house, you hear a sound outside, you go to the window, you look. There's a sequence, an approach. In the glass cabin, the outside is already there. You don't get to choose when to confront it. It confronts you while you're brushing your teeth. The next morning was bright. Cool. Early October in the Alleghenies. The trees were turning. Neil made eggs. I walked the perimeter of the cabin, looking for tracks, prints, any sign that someone had been standing in the tree line. The ground was soft, 2 days of rain before we'd arrived. And there was nothing, no impressions, no disturbance. The spot where the shape had been, it was just a gap between 2 hemlocks with a shallow drainage dip. No birch trunk either. Neil's explanation didn't hold. There was nothing there to have cast that silhouette. I stood there longer than I needed to. Long enough that it stopped feeling like I was checking for something and started feeling like I was waiting for something to correct itself. I told Erica. She nodded. "I don't want to talk about it with them," she said. Meaning Kayla and Neil. Why? Because Neil will explain it, and Kayla will agree with him, and then I'll feel crazy. And I know what I saw. I understood. But I also want to be honest. Part of me wanted Neil's explanation. Part of me wanted the birch trunk to be there. Bone white and obvious, so I could laugh at the dark in my own pattern matching. The fact that it wasn't there made me feel unmoored in a way I wasn't used to. I am not a person who feels unmoored. We spent the day outside, hiked a ridge trail, ate lunch on a rock overlooking a valley full of red and gold. It was beautiful, and none of it mattered. I was thinking about the glass, about how in a few hours the sun would set, the interior lights would come on, and the cabin would become a display case again. Us, lit up and visible from every direction, broadcasting ourselves into the forest, like a signal. At one point, Erica stopped walking ahead of me, not suddenly, not sharply, just stopped. I almost walked into her. "What?" I said. She didn't answer right away. She was looking into the trees and off the side of the trail, not scanning, fixing on something. "There," she said quietly. I followed her gaze. There was a clearing between the trees, nothing unusual about it, just a break in the density, a shallow dip in the ground where the light came through more cleanly. For a moment, and I want to be careful here, I thought I saw something standing there. Not clearly, not enough to describe. Just a suggestion of vertical shape where there shouldn't have been one. Then it wasn't there. "Did you see that?" she said. "I think so." Neil walked ahead of us, straight through the clearing. Didn't slow down, didn't look. Kayla followed him, same thing. They didn't even check, Erica said. Maybe it wasn't anything? She turned to me, not frustrated, not afraid, assessing, like she was trying to determine whether we were still sharing the same frame of reference. I'm not doing that thing, she said. What thing? Where you convince yourself it wasn't real? Because nobody else reacted. I didn't have an answer for that. We kept walking. But after that, the trail felt different, not dangerous, not threatening. Just slightly misaligned, like the spacing between things, trees, shadows, distance, wasn't quite resolving the way it should. That feeling stayed with me, longer than I want to admit. The second night, we decided to leave the blinds open. This was Kayla's idea. She wanted to lie on the couch and watch the stars through the ceiling panels. The loft had a skylight too. And she argued, correctly, that the whole reason we'd paid for the cabin was the glass. Erica didn't fight it. She poured herself a bourbon and sat in the armchair facing east, which I recognized as a tactical decision. She was going to watch. Not casually, deliberately. At 10:40, with Neil asleep on the couch and Kayla reading in the loft, I was washing dishes at the kitchen sink when I looked up through the north-facing glass and saw a figure standing 30 feet from the cabin. It was closer this time. Close enough that the floodlights gave it definition. And I need to be precise about what I saw, because I've gone over it enough times now that I trust my memory. It was tall, 6.5 feet, maybe more. It had a human silhouette in the way a mannequin does. The proportions were correct, but the distribution was wrong. The shoulders were too level, the head was too centered. People don't stand like that. People fidget, lean, shift. This thing was composed, like a photograph of a person rather than a person. Not frozen. Held. It was facing the cabin, facing me, and it was standing in full floodlight, making no effort to hide. Erica, I said. She was already standing. She'd seen it from the armchair. We looked at each other, and then we looked at it. And then something happened that I am going to describe as carefully as I can. It didn't react to being seen. That was the reaction. I raised my right hand, slowly, deliberately, the way you'd wave at a neighbor across a yard. And the figure, without delay, without any lag that I could perceive, raised its right hand. Not its left, which is what a mirror image would do. Its right. The same hand, the same motion, the same speed. As if it were not imitating me, but performing the same action from the same impulse at the same time. I dropped my hand. It dropped its hand. I stepped to the left. It stepped to its left. That's not mimicry, Erica said from behind me. Her voice was flat, clinical. ER voice. Mimicry has delay. That's simultaneous. Then what is it? I don't know. Don't go outside. I wasn't going to go outside, but I did something else. I turned off the kitchen floodlight, using the smart panel by the door. For a fraction of a second, the glass reflected only us again. Just the room. Just the four of us. No outside. And in that half second, before my eyes adjusted, I think I saw the figure take a step closer. Not a walk, not a step, a positional shift, the way a chess piece appears on a new square. I turned the light back on. It was 20 feet away now, close enough that I could see the surface of it. And this is where I lose confidence in my ability to describe what I was looking at, because the surface wasn't skin, and it wasn't fabric, and it wasn't bark or stone. It looked like the forest behind it, projected onto a three-dimensional form, like a camouflage so perfect. It wasn't hiding, it was quoting its environment. The shape of a person, filled with the texture of everything around it. Not blending in, matching context. Erica was beside me now. I heard her breathing. It was controlled. 4 count, the way she breathes when she's managing her adrenaline. "Wake Neil up," she said. I did. He came to the kitchen, grumpy and half asleep, and I pointed through the glass, and his face did something I'd never seen it do. It went blank. Not scared, not processing. Blank. Like the part of him that categorized and explained things had received an input it couldn't file. "What am I looking at?" he said. "You tell me." He stared at it for a long time. Then he said, "It's not looking at you." And that hit me wrong. "What?" "It's not facing you, it's facing me." I looked at the figure. It was facing me, I was certain. Its head, its center of mass, its posture, all oriented toward the kitchen window where I stood. "Neil, it's looking directly at me." "No," he said. "It's looking at me, I can feel it." Not a guess, a conviction. We were standing 2 feet apart. The figure was 20 feet away. The angular difference between us, from its perspective, would have been negligible. But Neil was adamant, and I was adamant. And Erica, standing behind both of us, said quietly, "It's looking at me." That was the fracture point, not the figure, not the glass. Eke out the fact that 3 people were looking at the same shape and receiving 3 different orientations, 3 different relationships with the same phenomenon. The glass didn't distort what we saw, it personalized it. Not the image, the relationship to it. Kayla came downstairs. She looked through the glass for a long time, then she said, "I don't see anything." Neil started to argue. I started to point. Erica put her hand on my arm and squeezed, a signal we'd developed over years of marriage that meant stop. I stopped. Neil didn't. "It's right there," he said, 30 feet out, just past the second hemlock, standing in the open. "There's nothing there, babe," Kayla said. She wasn't dismissive. She was concerned. She was looking at her husband, the way you look at someone who might be having a medical event. "I can see it, Kayla." "Okay, I believe you think you see it." That sentence detonated quietly in the room. Neil heard it, Erica heard it, I heard it. And something in Neil's posture shifted, because he'd spent his whole adult life being the person who corrected other people's perceptions. And now his wife, gently, lovingly, was correcting his, and not disagreeing with him, reframing him. He closed the blinds, all of them, every panel. He used the smart panel, and the cabin sealed up like an eyelid. And we were at a box of wood and steel, with warm lighting and no sight lines. And I thought, this is how normal houses work. This is what walls are for. Walls aren't shelter from weather. They're shelter from being seen or from having to agree on what you're seeing. Nobody spoke for a while. Kayla made tea. Neil sat on the couch and rubbed his face. Erica stood near the bathroom door, leaning against the only wall that had been solid from the start. "I want to leave in the morning," she said. "Agreed," I said. "It's a $400 night," Neil said. Not arguing, just stating. "The procurement manager. Pricing out the cost of fear." "I'll pay for it," Erica said. "That's not what He stopped. He looked at Kayla. "You really didn't see anything?" She shook her head. "What does that mean?" he said. Not to her, to the room. Nobody answered. "I'm going to tell you about what happened at 3 a.m, because I owe you accuracy, even though accuracy is the thing I trust least right now." I woke up. Erica was asleep beside me in the loft bed. The blinds were down. The cabin was dark. I could hear Neil snoring in the lower bedroom. I lay there for a minute, orienting myself, and then I realized what had woken me. The blinds on the east side of the loft were up. Not all the way, about 12 inches. A band of glass exposed at the bottom, showing a strip of dark forest. I hadn't opened them, Erica hadn't. The smart panel was downstairs, and there was no reason for that side to be open, no setting, no schedule, no habit. I got out of bed and crouched by the gap and looked through, and the figure was there, close, 10 feet from the glass, standing in the floodlight that I was certain Neil had turned off hours ago. It was directly outside the loft, facing the gap in the blinds, as if it had known exactly which 12 inches would be exposed. Not waiting, positioned. And it was different now. During the evening, it had been a shape, wearing the forest texture. Now it was wearing mine. I don't know how else to say it. Its surface had my coloring, my proportions. It stood the way I stand when I'm thinking. Weight on my left foot, right hand at my side, head tilted slightly forward. It was like looking at a photograph of myself, taken from outside, printed on a form that wasn't quite solid, not copying me as I was, copying me as I settle. I should have looked away. I should have closed the blinds manually, woken Erica, gone downstairs, done anything that constituted a decision. But I watched. I watched it because it was watching me. And there was a symmetry to it that felt almost gravitational, like looking into deep water. Then it raised its hand, pressed it against the glass. No sound, no vibration. But where its hand met the surface, the glass fogged the way glass fogs when warm breath hits cold air. A handprint formed. My handprint. I know it was mine. Weak because I'd pressed my palm against the loft glass that morning to test the thickness, and I'd left a smear that was still faintly visible, and the new print settled over it, like a transparency laid on a map. A perfect registration, point for point. Not approximate, exact. It held the pose. I held mine. And I understood, with a clarity that felt surgical, that it was not trying to come inside. It was not interested in entry. It was interested in correspondence. It wanted to demonstrate that the glass between them was not a barrier but a formality, that the separation we felt The wall, the lock, the blind, the reassuring physics of architectural enclosure was a courtesy. It was choosing to observe. Not separation. Agreement. I pulled the blinds down by hand. I went back to bed. Erica stirred and mumbled something, and I said, "Go back to sleep." And she did. And I lay there until morning, looking at the ceiling and knowing that the ceiling was a solid surface and the walls were glass and the blinds were fabric and none of it mattered. We left at 7:15, packed in 20 minutes. Neil was efficient and silent. Kayla was confused and gentle. Erica drove. I sat in the passenger seat and didn't look back. Here's the thing I need to tell you. The thing that made me write this down. We stopped for gas about 90 minutes south at a Sheetz off Route 219. Erica went inside. Kayla went to the bathroom. Neil and I stood by the car. He hadn't spoken in an hour. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Okay." "Last night, when we were all looking at it, I didn't see what you saw." "I know, you said it was facing you." "No, I mean, I didn't see a figure." I stared at him. "I saw Kayla," he said, standing outside in the floodlight, looking at me, wearing what she wore yesterday, yet smiling. I saw my wife standing outside the glass, and I knew she was on the couch behind me, and I didn't say anything because he stopped. His jaw worked, because she looked happy. She looked the way she looked when we first started dating, and I didn't want it to stop. Not better than her. Better than what time had done to her. He got in the car. I stood there, with the gas pump in my hand and the October sun on my face, and I thought about what I'd seen at 3 a.m, how it had worn my posture, how it had pressed my handprint into the glass, how I had watched it for what felt like a long time before I pulled the blinds down, how long I'd let it continue. And I thought about Erica saying, "It's looking at me," how certain she had been, how I had never asked her. It is what it looked like when it looked at her. On the drive home, I sat behind Erica and studied the back of her head, her hair, the way her neck met her collar, the specific, irreplaceable way she held the steering wheel, left hand at 10, right hand resting on the console. I cataloged these details with a desperation that frightened me, because I was suddenly unsure whether I was memorizing her or comparing her, whether I was looking at my wife or checking her against something I'd seen in the woods that had been shaped precisely and intentionally to look more like what I wanted than what I had. We've been home for 3 weeks. Nothing has followed us. Nothing stands outside our windows at night. The house has walls, real walls, plaster and wood, and I'm grateful for them in a way I never was before. Not because they keep things out, because they keep me from looking. Last Tuesday, Erica was standing in the kitchen in the morning light, pouring coffee, and she turned to hand me a mug, and I felt, for just a fraction of a second, disappointed. Not by her, by the resolution of her, by the way real people are slightly asymmetrical, slightly tired, slightly less than the idea of themselves, less resolved. That's what it left me with. Not a haunting, not a monster in the trees, a splinter of comparison. The knowledge that something once showed me a version of the people I love that was tuned, optimized, the way a photograph is optimized, and that I looked at it, and I didn't look away fast enough. Neil and Kayla are fine. They say they're fine. We had dinner with them last Saturday. Normal. Comfortable. Kayla laughed, and Neil told a long story about a supplier in Munich, and everything was exactly as it should have been. But twice during the meal, I caught Neil watching Kayla with an expression I recognized because I'd felt it on my own face, a quiet, corrosive scrutiny. Not suspicion, inventory. Checking her against something he'd seen through glass. Not to confirm she was real. To confirm she matched. Erica hasn't mentioned the cabin. She went back to work. She handles trauma cases and codes and 13-hour shifts without flinching. But she sleeps with the bedroom curtains drawn now, which she never did before. And once, 2 weeks ago, I woke at 2 a.m, and she wasn't in bed. I found her in the hallway, standing in the dark, looking at the bathroom mirror. "What are you doing?" I said. She turned to me. She looked caught, embarrassed, and something else, something worse. "Checking," she said. Not what she saw. What was still consistent. She didn't say what. I didn't ask. We went back to bed and lay on our respective sides, and the wall between us and the outside held firm, and the curtain stayed shut, and in the morning, we were fine. We were both fine. We're fine. I just don't look at windows anymore. Not because I'm afraid of what might be outside. Because I'm afraid I'll be disappointed when nothing is.